Hello everybody and welcome to another amazing video of DIY investing. In the last cycle, once I learned about market cycles, that gave me the biggest advantage inside of the market and allowed me to make millions of dollars over the next following years. Now that we're getting into my third bull run, I wanted to break down one of the strategies that I think is going to help the most people because I know for a fact it helped me the most in my trading plan and why it applies so much to the current cycle that we're seeing today. Bitcoin right now is following such a similar trend to prior cycles, and it's important that we understand the direction it's going to take so that we can profit off of it long term. Thank you guys so much for tuning in, and with that being said, let's jump right into this amazing video today. Alrighty guys, here we are to start off today's video, and we're going to be understanding the emotional psychology of market cycles. We're going to be breaking down every single one of our Bitcoin cycles, talking a little bit about how they've played out and what I think is going to be playing out in this cycle today. This is an important thing to understand because once you understand market cycles, everything starts to make a lot more sense inside the market. It's understanding our own emotions and how they get in the way and complicate our own ability to make money inside the markets. That's kind of what gives us the ability to finally shut that stuff off in our brain and kind of focus on the more logical perspective at hand. So when we're looking at this, guys, I always feel like this is the best thing for new guys to understand because of the fact crypto is such an emotional market, because there is so much money coming into this, but also because of the fact it's undervalued at the same time. It's kind of the perfect explosion between high emotions, 24/7 markets, undervalued, and everything is coming into it at the same time as far as money goes. And so this is a huge opportunity, but understanding the cycles of it and how each cycle has played out is where you're going to be able to understand where to get in the market, when to get out of the market, and most importantly, how to have a control on your own emotional state. Now, inside of this is the standard cycle you're going to see. It doesn't matter what market it is, they're all going to do it to some extent, but we see these big parabolic rallies, and this is where emotions get the highest, right? Optimism, belief, thrill, euphoria. We're all rich. I'm a genius, right? Everybody gets super excited to blow off top. This is always like what we saw in 2021. Everybody was spending hundreds of thousands of dollars on little pictures and NFTs and things like that. People were just throwing money at any type of random altcoin, no matter what it was called. They were all just blowing up. We saw some of those altcoins like Shiba Inu just go up such insane amounts of value. And that is a lot like what you're expecting to see inside of this type of market cycle, inside of euphoria, right? Then you go through the bearish psychology. This is the bearish emotions. This is where the average person's FOMO buying and accumulating at the highs. And as the market starts crashing, they're over leveraged at the top. And this is the emotions that they feel. Complacency. This is kind of the first lower high. We just need to cool off for the next rally. Anxiety. Why am I getting margin calls? Denial. I'll just keep holding. You know, it's going to go back up someday. Capitulation. Everybody's out of the market. And then starts a brand new cycle in the process. Disbelief. This is a sucker's rally. Nobody really believes that it's going to keep going up, right? This is just the beginning of the uptrend. Everybody thinks that these are bear market rallies, always the same every single cycle, and only for price to skyrocket and go into a brand new bull run. So when we're looking at these, I think it's important that we look at disbelief because disbelief happens twice. Disbelief happens at the beginning of the cycle here before this brand new parabolic rally starts, and disbelief happens at the very ending of the bear market. Right when we break out of that bear market and we start that next uptrend, that's disbelief because nobody really thinks that it's going to start taking off again in those early parts of the cycle. Now, if we come over here to 2017, we're going to kind of analyze the same sort of patterns and emotion because in my opinion, it's all pretty much the same sort of setup all the way through. What we end up seeing at the top, euphoria, and then we get the same sort of complacency where it sells off and then we make this first lower high of the bear market. And then we go through, once again, anxiety, denial, panic. I'm pretty sure that's all happening right here until we get to the bottom of capitulation, which is basically the bottom of the market cycle, right? Capitulation is where all of the money ends up leaving that's going to. Everybody panic sells that got in at the top. That's why it says, I'm getting 100% out of the markets. I can't afford to lose more. So overall, this is the same sort of thing. You see these big parabolic rallies, these big market crashes. We see these same sort of patterns being repeated. Although the price action is bound to look different to some extent. Every cycle is going to be different to their own sort of way. But overall, we see the same sort of patterns. In this cycle of the Wall Street cheat sheet, we see this kind of pattern where we make these three lows before we make the breakout, right? In Bitcoin in 2015, it was a little bit different, where this thing just kind of sat here going sideways, and we had these two sort of double bottom capitulations. But then, out of that spawned the new uptrend, where we kind of rode this trend line for about a year straight. So we end up seeing the same sort of thing. Out of the bear market, whatever way it looks, though you get disbelief, right? Disbelief. And that's pretty much right here. The beginning of the new uptrend. Nobody really thinks it's going to go up. Nobody ever thinks it's going to do anything. This is when I bought my first Bitcoin. It was $450. And it was right before that first breakout. And I remember that was the, overall thought in crypto back then. At the time, we didn't really have Twitter to talk about it as much. I had just started my Twitter account in 2014. I didn't use it as much as I did like I do for Twitter nowadays for crypto. I remember getting inside the troll box on Poloniex, which is where I used to talk with people back in the old days, trading on Poloniex. And I remember that was the sentiment. Nobody really thought BTC was going to go up again, although it was a pretty obvious ascending triangle. That was the reason I bought into it, because my friend, High Altitude Investing, if you guys know him, he kept telling me about Bitcoin. And I knew it was going to go up because I kept looking at these cycles, seeing how it just keeps pumping. So I didn't really understand it fully to this extent of market cycles. But once I saw this, that's when I got my first Bitcoin. And I remember the sentiment being the same. Nobody really thought it's going to start going up anymore. But that kind of carries all the way through. I remember it was disbelief even after the halving. When we dumped right here, I got liquidated trying to long it after we broke up and lost all my Bitcoin at that point. We saw disbelief pretty much carry all the way up until we got pretty much at those all-time highs. And so that's something to keep in note of, is the fact that the disbelief phase can kind of carry out, and we have seen that happen in prior cycles. No matter how obvious the uptrend is, people's emotions are always going to stay the same. Now we're getting into our last cycle, and in my opinion, the chart is going to look quite a bit different as far as the way that the cycle looks. Considering Bitcoin makes this big rally, it's all pretty much the same here. Going into euphoria at the top, being right there. Complacency, more of an obvious complacency wave right here. For Bitcoin, it looks a lot more like that Wall Street cheat sheet. And then we go into the same pattern. It really was looking like it right here. I remember back in those days, everybody was drawing pictures of the Wall Street cheat sheet, coming to basically right here and saying that we're just right at the end of this before it starts going back up again, only for it to actually finish and make one more lower low. So the chart itself is a little bit different, but at the end of the day, you can't expect it to always be 100% the exact same sort of setup. They're going to vary, but what we do see is the same sort of thing. We see the parabolic rally. We see the initial decline all the way back down. And even though Bitcoin had a secondary sort of capitulation right here, it's all sort of the same sort of cycle, considering once we break up out, it's the same sort of move as the disbelief phase right here. When you leave the accumulation, and then that was this entire consolidation here. I would say main disbelief was the COVID bottom. That was where the majority of people were feeling actual disbelief. And a lot of that had to do with the fact that we were still maintaining a higher high. I mean, if you look at this still maintained a higher high from the capitulation. So that hadn't changed, but it was just because it was such a massive capitulation that people got so disbelieving over the fact we would ever have a new cycle. And most people capitulated inside of that move. And I don't blame them. I mean, it was a crazy time. I mean, by far the craziest time I've ever been a part of in crypto. Even more crazy than the last bear market. But I mean, these are the same sort of things. Once again, that disbelief phase goes into a new cycle, and that's exactly what we ended up seeing. So how does this apply to the current cycle that we're in today? Because in my opinion, our current cycle looks a lot like the same sort of setups. Nothing has really changed for the most part. If we come over here and put up the Wall Street cheat sheet, the big thing that we have as far as the difference goes is the fact that our top had this kind of weird looking, our blow off top never really actually even went into much of a new all-time high. So that's why it caught people, including myself, off guard. Now, when we're looking at this chart, we're really looking at the initial decline from the cycle top, because this was our cycle top right here, right? And so this is what we're mainly comparing. Our lower high came down here a little bit lower, right? And we still had the same sort of capitulation. The only difference was this lower high came down a little bit closer than topping all the way up here at the top. But we do see the same sort of emotions. The only difference was at the FTX capitulation, we did make this tiny little lower low below the main support, but overall it was kind of similar to this same sort of thing. Capitulation, anger, depression. these three little lower lows. So I would argue that maybe even this cycle is more closely related to the prior ones when we're looking at the emotions compared to the Wall Street cheat sheet. But the big thing to follow after this has been the fact that we've just been maintaining this uptrend for a year straight out of the capitulation in the bottom of this market cycle. Once we broke out here of the bottom, that's the disbelief phase. And I think it's hilarious how people got the exact same way when we broke out of 25K and retested it. That was mainly the disbelief. And so that's kind of where I believe that we're at right now inside of this big picture market cycle as well. We're currently leaving the disbelief phase and we're heading back up to some of these higher levels in the market cycle. I would still argue that we're still inside of a little bit of disbelief. Like this emotion is going to kind of carry over until we get over here to hope. Because remember, this repeats twice. We have disbelief there and we have disbelief there. So the next emotion that comes is hope. And notice here, hope is when you really start trending up, really start breaking out. And that kind of looks like where we're at right here. It's kind of interesting how it's that same sort of pattern setting up. I don't know if we're going to see any more of a correction, but regardless, if this thing sends it all the way back up to the top of this lower high like I've been talking about, we got to expect that we're going to start leaving disbelief and actually getting into hope, where people are starting to really believe in crypto again. People are getting more invested. The people that were disbelieving all the way back down in here are probably going to start shifting their script and going towards a different trading plan if they were maintaining a bearish thesis. And then that's going to be the point where, you know, we're getting ready for that next major cycle. This is going to look completely different in its own way, like all of the other ones have. I mean, it's going to vary to some extent, but the same thing has happened every cycle. We have this disbelief phase no matter how it looks, and then we go into this brand new all-time high, going all the way back to 2016, 17, that bear market. We saw 280 days where we spent in this double capitulation bottom, and then we started just uptrending pretty steadily after that. It was kind of all the same sort of setup, although it was varying in price action. The two first cycles were pretty similar as far as just making these first two higher highs and kind of growing on a main trend line like this. They were a little bit more consistent with each other. That was kind of what we saw down in here for Bitcoin as well, was the market just growing off of this main trend line. But I mean, the only real difference would be probably this cycle in 2018 because of the COVID capitulation. We were maintaining a main trend line until COVID happened, right? We had that entire black swan, and I honestly think that that probably wouldn't have broke down like this had we have not had COVID and the entire global pandemic that broke out. So overall, every cycle has built some type of uptrend. We leave the disbelief phase and then we go into the new cycle. And this cycle right now is pretty consistent with all of the other ones as far as just so far having this main trend line and just building off of it after our bottom formation. And now the only thing we're really waiting for is the halving, right? The halving came at different points in the cycles, but the Bitcoin halving last cycle came right here at May 10th. We saw the majority of the bull run take off shortly after. The halving in 2016 happened right here. I think it was like the 9th of July or something like that. We ended up having one more sell-off shortly after, but once again, guys, the bulk of the bull run took off shortly after that. And then if we go into our first cycle that we ever even had a Bitcoin halving, the Bitcoin halving happened right here, and then once again the majority of the profit set in and the majority of the bull run took off. So when we're looking at all of these, I think it's important that we're looking at the perspective, we're looking at the emotions so that we can also see where we're at currently. And as it stands, I kind of just think that we're sitting here in this disbelief phase, leaving the disbelief phase, just kind of growing. Because notice here, this thing just kind of builds this new uptrend as we're just kind of growing in that disbelief rally. And that's more or less the same thing that we've done here. The price action is just a lot more volatile because it's Bitcoin. If we look at this, notice how once we broke out of that descending resistance on this chart, that was where the disbelief rally set in. And when we look at our market cycle for Bitcoin, when we broke out of it and did this exact same setup where we made this lower low, retested it as support, that's what set in the disbelief rally. Perfect with this exact same setup that we saw there leading into this rally. So I just think that these are important things to be looking at, considering the fact Bitcoin seems to be doing the most like setup to this chart that we've ever really seen before, and I do believe it's going to play out real time as this market continues to progress. Everybody that's been bearish down in here has just been proven wrong every single time. Not only have we maintained higher highs and higher lows, not only have we actually flipped 25k as support, but we broke out of even that range, and now we're sitting into somewhat of a short-term price discovery. So big picture, we got to expect these markets are going to keep breaking out. We got to expect that the market cycle is going to play out just like it has in years past, because when we look at the cycles from years past, we understand that it's also very related and very similar on a lot of different fronts. So with that being said, guys, if you found value, leave a like, comment, and subscribe. Hit the notification bell so you don't miss out on any of these videos. If you guys want to join my Discord server, whether free or check out my socials, links are in the description. If you guys also want to see all of my trades, how I'm investing my portfolio over the course of these cycles, anything buy and sell and trading, even outside of crypto, links are in the description to go ahead and sign up on my website. On my website, you're going to be able to actually join. It's a private group inside of my Discord, but through the website, you get access to it. So make sure you guys sign up there while I'm doing my Black Friday sale. Only going to be going on for a couple more days. So if you do want to get access to that, links are in the description. Thank you guys so much. And with that being said, I'll catch you in the next one. As always, peace out.